Everyone, it's nice to see everyone meeting and talking to people that they may not have seen since the last meeting that they went to. My name is Karen McGuire. People know me as Kim since I was a waitress in Bahaba, Maine. That was just a couple years ago in my 20s. And I'm the president of Save Twin Brooks, 501c3 nonprofit. We do accept donations. And we are here tonight to give you an update of where we're at with our campaign to preserve the Twin Brooks piece of property at 35 Scudder and also the Stewart's Creek estuary. I'm going to, there are a couple questions, Angela, a couple questions that we want to ask. They're up on my computer, Angela, if you want to bring that up. First of all, I'd like to know how many people in the room are from Osterville? Okay. Let's see what we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, around 10, 11 people from Osterville. And what else do we have, Angela?
Town councilors,
And
one town council. That's okay. That's great.
2 town councilors.
If you haven't signed that petition, please do so.
Okay, we have town councilor Betty Ludke from precinct 3, okay, which is Hyannis Port. And
Gloria Rabu.
okay, and Gloria, are you a town councilor in the town of Barnstable?
I was for many years.
Wonderful. And what precinct did you support?
I support all the precincts when it's necessary.
Okay, but are you an Osterville resident?
I am now a Centerville resident.
Okay.
But I participate also in Hyannis activities still.
Wonderful.
It's still very important. It's part of this large town.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope we can get to know you a little bit more. Thank you so much for coming. Okay, another question, Angela.
Did everyone sign the petition that's over on the table? If you haven't, we'll pass it around while you're listening to the presentation.
It's the same petition.
Right, it's the same petition. If you were at our last meeting, it's the same petition, so you don't need to sign it again. Oh, I don't need that.
Okay, all right.
The painting, I just want to say that it's been generously donated by Jim Freehart, who is a local Cotuit artist, and hopefully soon we'll be creating a fundraiser where we're going to put it up for silent auction. Our next meeting is going to be in Marston Mills, to be announced shortly in our newsletter. And please note that we will be videotaping this presentation, and it will be available on YouTube, and we will give you the link when it's done. And to you.
Okay, thank you, Angela. Angela is our communications director and a very important member of our board of directors. Also tonight, we have over here against the wall table, Milton Berglund, member of Save Twin Brooks board of directors, and also been very active in Hyannis in many different areas. And in the back, we have Harry Alberson, another member of the board of directors. And who else do I have in the audience? Oh, my husband, Brian Hughes. We keep it in the family. Brian's our vice president. And Angela Russ, like I said, our communications director, and Liz Day, who's our clerk and secretary for Save Twin Brooks. Did I miss anyone? Okay, welcome. I'm going to start, and Brian's going to time me. I hope to talk about 15 minutes. Got to put it on. And give you an overview of what we're advocating for, because you hear a lot of things about organizations and they're not doing this or they're against that. I want to make sure everyone understands what we're advocating for. Felicia Penn, who is a very, very active member of our group, is going to be speaking about the how our effort relates to the local comprehensive plan and regional policy plan, and hopefully give us an update on what happened at the planning board meeting last night. I'm going to come back and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the appeal that's going on. I don't know if anybody saw online edition today of the Cape Cod Times had an article about the appeal. We have some copies that we can circulate around with the group. And we want this as an interactive discussion. I see some familiar faces and some new faces. We really want to hear from everyone in the room. So we'll be breaking this up and trying not to talk too much and let you people ask the appropriate questions and say how you feel. Also in the room, we have Janet Milkman, who is Executive Director of the Barnstable Land Trust, and she's been an excellent partner with us in conservation and restoration. And I'm sure she's going to have some comments as well. I have a slide that talks about BLT. Okay, let's start now. Next. Okay, what are our goals? What are we standing up for? What's most important to us? And notice. Okay, main goal for us is to restore and conserve the Stewart's Creek estuary for the benefit of future generations. So let me try this little tool here. Brian's little tool. All right, so here we are, Hyannis Harbor, and over here getting into Hyannis Port, and this is the main waterway, and you come up into Stewart's Creek. Here's the Twin Brooks property that we're talking about at 35 Scudder. And if you see, there are ponds that feed into the waterways of that go along both sides of this brook. Which is Joshua's Brook and Stewart's Creek. So we are actually talking about restoring the Stewart's Creek estuary, the entire estuary, because it's a critical piece of land that has been degraded over the years. Milton can talk to you all about it, because Milton and Kate Gulliver and Brian and myself worked with the town on this. And now we are also working with the town. I have a slide about that. So next slide, please. The cornerstone of this restoration of the Stewart's Creek estuary is obviously the Twin Brooks site, and that is approximately 40 acres, and that's where the golf course is located. But we look at it as filled wetland. So a member of our group found the original deed from 1845, where Franklin Beersey sold this piece of property to A.D. Makepeace and John Crocker to grow cranberries. And we still have a lot of history here with Makepeace family. If you go on the site of the Hotel and Conference Center, they talk a little bit about the history of the property. The Hotel and Conference Center is now owned by the Irish Village. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what are we? Another goal. We're really trying to promote the health and the quality. Sorry about this quality of the entire watershed, including the 2 tidal streams and the surrounding lands and wetlands. So once again, the property is in the forefront, and then the creeks that go on both sides of the property are coming down this way and this way, all the way down into Nantucket Sound. So Joshua's Brook and Stewart's Creek occur at the site's margins, and they are significant features. Nearly all of the observed wetland habitats at the site are associated with one or both of these waterways. So we have species living in there, around there, and also I guess we're going to have some frogs populating the sites and coming out of the creek and going into the ponds at Twin Brooks, some of the spring peepers and such. We just had an email about that. Next slide, please. Okay, another goal is to strengthen and sustain. You know what, Brian, I'm going to have to get back here.
Okay, better, it's not any better here.
No, okay. This is strengthen and sustain our natural carbon sequestration, reducing urban heat. I have this slide in here because you can get a sense of the height of these trees on the Twin Brooks Golf Course site. Here we are at a MEPA visit, Mass Environmental Policy Office visit, when they came to survey the site. It was their first on-site visit since COVID had been in place. We were lucky enough to get them to come down. I said, why don't you come and visit? Make your this first visit out of the office. Walked around all the way around the property, saw wildlife around the ponds and birds in the trees. So what is here? What's here are 500 plus mature trees, specimen trees, with a canopy height of 65 to 80 feet, trunk diameters of up to 20 inches. All sequestering carbon and providing oxygen on this site at the west end of Hyannis, which is the most populated town and village on Cape Cod. Let me say, these are all going to be cut down. They're going to be cut down, and the hills are going to be leveled, and it's going to become quite a development. But we're gonna stop that. And give me the next slide, please. Okay, I love this one as well. Last February, we went to the site and took some photos of footprints of some of the wildlife. I don't know if we have any nature lovers here, but we have at least three different types of footprints. Looks like turkeys, rabbits, they all good, their critters live there. So over time, the number of species have been observed by an employee of the golf course. 83 different kinds of birds, including the bald eagle, 16 different types of reptiles and amphibians, 5 fish. But don't worry, hey, if we are successful, then they won't have to move the fish from pond number 4, the largest pond on this site, before they fill it in and put a building above it. And they won't have to cut down the trees that house the bird's nest last, which was one of the requests of one of the participating members at the Cape Cod Commission subcommittee hearing. Next slide, please. Okay, we also want to dedicate this site for conservation education, recreation, and community use. And the site is surrounded by environmental justice communities. And what do we mean by environmental justice communities? That means a community that is a minority community, at least 25% minorities. Some of them may not be English speaking. Some of them are at a certain particular income level. So this could be an excellent place for walking paths, and we could have a variety of different activities here. Next slide, please. Okay, we also want to preserve the critical elements, thank you, of our local heritage, culture, and economy. So maintaining Cape Cod's character is essential to the continued economic health of Barnstable County and to the quality of life of its residents. And that comes from the Cape Cod Commission's own Community Design Technical Bulletin. So we have stated over and over again and made presentations on the importance of preserving the heritage, the culture, and the economy of Cape Cod. And this is actually Nirvana, which is a coffee shop on 6A in Barnstable Village, which I love to visit. And I think I even recognize that dog. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we also want to assure the long-term management of the property, partnering with public and private conservation groups. We protect the places you love through conservation, care, education, and inspiration. I got that quote, and I got this photo from the Barnstable Land Trust. They have been partners with us from the very beginning in talking about the need for conservation restoration. They came up with a plan of how this property could have both housing, even housing, and good usable open space for the community to use. And they went out to the community and talked to them about that and sought input. Okay, next slide, please. We also want to restore the Stewart's Creek estuary. Once again, this is something we worked on in 2014, 2015, 2016 with the town, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, DPW, and the Woods Hole Group. So we're now in discussions with the town and DPW and the Woods Hole Group on restoration of the estuary. We want to finish the job that was started back then because there's still a lot more to do. And we're very lucky to have Town Councilor Betty Ludicky as someone who is supporting this and helping to get this to the attention of the appropriate people in the town. Okay, next. All right, now I'm going to break and I'm going to introduce Felicia Penn, who is going to go on and share with us some of her thoughts and experiences. And then do we have to change out a,
Yep.
Okay, thumb drive, and then we'll go back and talk about the appeal. Hold on, please.
Let's get it up, right? Oops. Okay, but we. Uh-oh.
Technology, you have to love it. I see another familiar face in the front row. The head of Meeting House Farm, Judy, was so happy to see you here. I mailed in my money for my garden plot. We also have with us Denise Johnson, and she is one of the plaintiffs in this appeal to the Cape Cod Commission. And Denise, can you just raise your hand so people know who you are? Okay, thank you. Also on the appeal, the other plaintiff is Cape Way Towing. Dean Weymouth has a towing business directly cat-a-corner from the proposed entrance of this to this property. So we are I'm very, very pleased with the reaction that we have had from people who we pass on the street and say, oh, by the way, we just filed an appeal to preserve this property, and you get these hand fists and these waves and the yahoo. I think people have been waiting a long time to see if we can actually take some action to preserve property. Thank you.
Filling time.
Don't stress, please. Are you safe? All right. Hi, good evening. All righty, so some of my slides are a little redundant to what Kim did, because she didn't do that last time, so but some of them are new too, so you can, I just want to show you in the 50s and 60s that they're in the top right. Where's my little pointer thing?
Oh, no,
Right there.
the red.
The red thing.
Yeah.
This was a Ford garage. That was a Ford garage, okay? My hands are very shaky. I'm sorry about that. And then it became a gated gas station, and then it became the park that we see today, because there's a lot of environmental damage on that property, as we know. And then heading more this way is, there was a house, then there's the bank, and then there's the liquor store, and then there's Hall's driving range, and that's how that property was then. All right, yes. You already saw this aerial. I think what I want to bring up that she didn't talk about, this is a different slide, obviously, but it comes, I want you to know that Stewart's Creek Estuary starts way up at the wastewater treatment plant, which is the top of the arrow there. And it goes down through the ponds and then goes through the property and goes out to Hyannis Harbor. But the point is that 35 Scudder is a natural filter for effluent from the wastewater treatment plant and from toxins in the ponds, and it acts as a huge natural sand filter that removes that before it gets to Hyannis Harbor and eventually to Nantucket Sound. And for those of you who aren't sure or don't know, that that's pond has the highest rate of PFAS in the county. So not only, so that's another thing that contributes to this being an environmental justice area. It's the highest concentration of PFAS in the county. And the town has a report that says that. Tom Cambereri, who used to be the water expert, resource expert for the Cape Cod Commission, is a individual expert now. He was hired by the town to do a report, and that came from his report. Okay, that's where that comes from. It's not hearsay. Okay, next. You already know this, so next. I just did want to show you how many trees. So this is from a geotechnical report from soil engineers that the applicants submitted to the Cape Cod Commission. Because what I'm going to talk about today, after we get through how the land functions, which you already know a lot of, is what the differences are between the development agreement, the regional policy plan, which we'll call RPP, and then the town's local comprehensive plan, the LCP, okay? But their engineers, their soil engineers, actually submitted this report that said the superficial topsoil and subsoil are not suitable to support the proposed buildings, should be entirely removed. They're talking about removing them, and the existing fill also needs to be removed. So they're talking about going down 4.5 feet, taking all the soil out, which obviously she just talked about cut the trees down. Now the trees are going to be removed, the root system is going to be removed. So all the soil, the roots, and everything going down at least 4.5 feet, and it may be deeper at other locations, closer to the banks and the brooks and the creeks, et cetera, et cetera. So they're talking about, they had 28 pages, give or take, of very detailed analysis. It was an excellent report, most of which I didn't understand because I'm not a soil engineer, but they were talking about how the footings had to be. It's on a slab and not basements, obviously. And they also talked about drain holes being in the walls of the building and drain pipes coming from the walls out. And they talked about how far out it should go and what should be in the ground to absorb the stuff, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't do this, we didn't make this up, it was for the applicant. And you can find the entire report if you go on the Cape Cod Commission website. If you look at the final development agreement, and then it has, this is a appendix A, but it's on page 8 or 10. I can't remember which one. And it's not easy to find, but you can find it. Thank you. Next. And Kim referred to the original deed for the sale of this thing. And this is the original. Next. And this is the translation of that. Okay, it's just transliteration, so you could read real English versus the old English. Okay, but it clearly talks about, and Mr. Burse, and he's really talking about how he's selling this to 80 Makepeace. And this is the exact verbiage of that deed before, about the swamp situated in the village of Hyannis. This is what it is. This swamp is about 1.5 rods. I learned today a rod is about 5.5 yards. It mentions the swamp 4 or 5 times in there. And so, and 6 times, and to make cranberry bogs. So clearly, way back, this is approximately, he bought this in 1845, and he's selling it to Makepeace at the end of the 1800s. So it's approximately 30, 50 years after that. So clearly, the basis on this land, which is supported by what we just saw from the soil engineers, was swampland. Okay, next. So what I'm really going to talk about, I just wanted to get the lay of the land. Kim gave you some of that too. We got into a little bit of other stuff. So differences in disparities between the development agreement, regional policy plan, please come in, and local comprehensive plan, which I will say RPP and LCP, just so you know what that stands for. Next. Okay, so the Cape Cod Commission says this project complies with the regional policy plan, housing goals, community design goals, and wetlands resource goals. So, but it doesn't. So on the left here, I'll tell you that the regional policy plan has within it technical bulletins, and the technical bulletins give guidance to applicants as to how they can satisfy the goals. So if you want to satisfy housing goal number 1, and you can find all these technical bulletins on the Cape Cod Commission website, you just type in technical bulletin housing, and up it comes, and it tells you all the stuff, okay? This is all the things it says that you can do to satisfy housing goal number 1. And the Cape Cod Commission said that this project satisfies all their housing goals. You can create small scale units, small lot residential, redevelop existing buildings, pursue infill development, create a variety of year-round housing types, create seasonal workforce housing. And down the bottom, create multi-unit residential development with 100% rental units, which this would be, but of 850 square feet or less. So, over here you're seeing little squares, but that was going to be the international no symbol. So I'm in red. Sorry about that. It didn't translate onto this computer. So that's taking a Mac to a PC. So there goes my big impact for that slide. All right. But every time you see those little squares, you know it's the red and for European no. All right. It doesn't do any of those things. It does promote an increase in housing. That it would do, but not diversity and choice, and it doesn't do it via any of those ways that their own technical bulletin asks it to do. Next. So I can't figure out how the Cape Cod Commission possibly determined that the project creates small scale housing units or any other requirement you just saw. Next. Housing goal 2, promote an increase in year-round housing with supply consistent with the RPP. So those are all the consistency with the RPP would have been the previous slide that we just read of how you're supposed to do that. And it's saying that it has to be in one of these 2 areas. So the Cape Cod Commission deemed that this land is partially in a community activity center and partially in a natural area. So for a community activity center, You're supposed to have higher density housing as long as the type, density, form, and everything is consistent with the context of surrounding development, and smaller unit sizes less than 1,200 square feet are preferred. Next. We know that this is not consistent with the surrounding areas, which are mostly single-family homes. And we know that, I don't know what the square footage is actually of their apartments, because they haven't said, but I imagine they range from 1,000 to about 2,500 square feet, but we don't know that. And for a natural area, their terms say new development is discouraged. If housing is proposed, only very low density, small lot cluster, open space development should be considered for natural area. And part of this land is considered a natural area. Next. How they possibly determine that this is consistent with housing goal 2, we don't know. Next, please. Housing goal 3, protect and improve existing housing stock. There's no housing on this land at this time, so we don't think this even applies to this project. Next. Housing goal 4. Increase housing affordability. So this is a challenge. Excuse me. The total of 41 units are counted as affordable. But it's very unclear how long these units will be restricted, because the development agreement, that's the DA, does not expressly indicate that these units will be deed restricted in perpetuity. And what's the point of affordable housing designating them if they're not going to be restricted for everybody to use forever? The development agreement expires after 12 years, and as it's written now, it's possibly affordable units do too. Very unclear, very iffy. Next. So for housing, which is the elephant in the room here, the objective is only one is applicable to this, which is the affordability, but we're not sure for how long. HOU 1, 2, and 3, it fails to meet those criteria. Next. So the next issue is community design. Goal is to protect and enhance the unique character of the region's built-in natural environment based on the local context. Does this project do this? No. Next. Second goal, minimize the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces. Well, we read in their soil engineers plan what they have to do to this land to make it support the buildings they want to put on it. How can they possibly say that that will minimize the amount of newly disturbed land and impervious surfaces? Does it do this? No. So they use words in the development agreement in phrases like mostly, partially, and some in the defense of their decision, which to me tells me that a very practiced attorney wrote it. Okay, so this is some recommendations in the community design from the technical bulletin. You could type in technical bulletin community design and look all this up. Break down large masses, vary the roof form, avoid false fronts, use traditional building materials, screen parking from view, design smaller parking lots with more landscaping. Next. So you can see no, 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 no. Doesn't do any of those. Next. This is an elevation. I will give them credit. The first time I ever saw an elevation from these guys was 2 years ago, and none of the peaks on the roof were there. There was no facade changes, no anything. It looked like an army barracks. It was really ugly. It's still really ugly, but does it do what the technical bulletin says it should do? No. Okay, so it doesn't comply with the community design guidance and objectives. Next. Wetland resources. Goal is to protect, preserve, or restore the quality and natural values and functions of inland and coastal wetlands and their buffers. Does it do this? No. Hell no, we got a hell no from over there. Okay. This is the most unbelievable statement in the whole development agreement, okay? They found that the project is inconsistent with wetlands resources, but because it serves a public benefit by providing housing for a quote substantial portion of the population, it's acceptable. Really? Next. They didn't say what substantial meant. They didn't say which population they were talking about. Are they talking about the village? Are they talking about the town? They're talking about the county? I mean, that's a crazy statement. Okay, so we're going to talk about now inconsistencies with the local comprehensive plan, which is the town's master plan. And you will note that there's some similarities between the regional policy plan and the master plan, because the towns are encouraged to create a master plan that satisfies certain conditions stated in the regional policy plan. So they kind of match up and do parallel each other. But I started looking at the master plan, the LCP for the town of Barnstable isn't as organized as the regional policy plan is for the commission. So you can read anything you want in there. And I just thought I'd start with the definition of redevelopment. What a good idea. Since the Cape Cod Commission said that this land at 35 Scudder is already developed, this would be a redevelopment, all right? So it says reconstruction, reuse, or change in use of any developed property that does not intensify use over what is allowed by zoning ordinance and other land use regulations. So the intent of the plan is to not intensify the use of an already developed property. This project significantly intensifies the land use, so it's not consistent with the LCP. Not mine. Next. Okay. In 2001, do we miss one? Go back one. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. The LCP requires new development to incorporate and be compatible with local scale. We already know from the RPP that they talk about local scale. Well, the local plan talks about that too. And they're going to be seeking numerous zoning waivers, height, density, and others that prove that the project is inconsistent with this plan. Next. 2001, seems like a long time ago, but this plan is still valid because I'm on the LCP and where is she? Over there, Jennifer, she's on the LCP committee working up a new plan, and Bob's an advisory committee person. We don't know what that does yet, but that's all right. We'll find out someday. 2001, the town set an annual building permit limit, which was news to me, of 96 new market rate units, 36 new affordable units to preserve the character of the villages. Since 2017, there are 967 housing units either proposed in the pipeline or built in Hyannis. This does not include this project as proposed. If this project goes through, there'll be 1,279 new units of housing in Hyannis alone since 2017. And I got that information of the units from the town's residential housing report, which is also online. It hasn't been updated since September, so maybe there's more units. I don't really know. I looked just the other day to see if they had done an updated one because it seemed to be quarterly, but I didn't see that. Next. So they talk about sewer and traffic neutral policies. Any commercial development and infill and redevelopment outside the growth incentive zone, which this is, shall be permitted only if it demonstrates it does not lower the level of service along roadway segments and intersections, and actually mentions West Main Street as part of this in the plan. I mean, there's a lot of verbiage where those dots are. It doesn't change the meaning. I just got rid of all that other stuff. It actually mentions West Main Street on that. This project is not in the incentive zone, growth incentive zone, and it would clearly lower level of service. Next. And the LCP has great goals for West Main Street to improve community character, seek traffic congestion relief, traffic calming measures, drinking water protection, etc. And this project doesn't do anything to do any of that, so that's not consistent with that. Next. The scale, new development and redevelopment must reasonably relate to surrounding structures, settings, and landscapes. It does not do that. It's off a scale with the neighborhood, totally inconsistent. Next. I know you're getting bored with this, but I'm just making the point that there's more than one issue that it doesn't do. Land use for Hyannis. So they talk about, they have this wonderful goals, the needs of Hyannis. Foremost among them is to maintain village character, to preserve, maintain, improve residential neighborhoods and village character, to protect natural resources. I love the last one, improve distribution of recreational conservation and open space in the village of Hyannis. Really? Doesn't do any of those. Wildlife and plant habitat resources, minimize the impact of new development on wildlife and plant habitat, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it doesn't do any of that. We saw how many birds and other animals live in this property. Next. So there are many, many more inconsistencies, but I think you get the idea. We got one more. Project is inconsistent with the RPP, housing, community design, wetlands resources. We went through all of these things. It ravishes wildlife and plant life. And I just want to read my closing statement here. Sorry about that. That's that pink line around in that pink blob at the top, right behind the conference center. That's pond 4, that will be filled in. The Conservation Commission and the town of Barnstable said because it's a man-made pond, they don't have jurisdiction over it, so they're not going to defend its existence, even though wildlife, amphibians and stuff live in there. Doesn't matter, just because it's man-made. So every single tree within the pink line will be uprooted. Pond 4 will be filled in. All topsoil will be removed at least down to 4.5 feet. New soil will be brought in. No one has said what effect that will have on the brook, the creek, the salt marsh, and the natural filter that is 35 Scudder. Does it make sense to rape the land in order to provide market rate housing, that is rental housing, that is not dedicated to year-round residents, and affordable housing that will expire in 12 years, may expire in 12 years or less? There are better alternatives for both this property and the proposed project. Thank you. Anybody have questions? Over here.
Yeah, my name is Bernard Klang. I'm from Osterville,
Great.
and I completely support your efforts in every way, shape, it seems quite self-evident the ecological benefit maintaining this as it is. But I guess I have a question. This push for multi-unit housing that I see. Many of us lived through a thing the last couple of years called COVID, where we had to stand 6 feet apart, put on masks, and whatnot, educate our children, learn how to reduce fractions again and stuff like that. I'm wondering whether anybody has ever questioned the public health efficacy of multi-unit housing in an age of shared ventilation systems, in an age where we just had to, bunker down in our houses. That's one thing. And also, I would say, in relation to that, I worry that the Barnstable County Commissioners, now I know they're the elected body, and Cape Cod Commission is the
Appointed.
feudal.
They're appointed.
Yeah, they're appointed by whatever they are. Duchy in medieval Germany. But they are they have allocated $11.4 million from the American Rescue Plan, which was intended to be a COVID relief plan, to promote this and to put money into it. I suspect if you follow the money trail, your tax dollars to the federal government are being spent to ruin your own ecosystem in your own neighborhood for profit. That's what I'm putting forward. And I'm telling you, the reason I'm saying that is I think and I'm a Save Dowsett Beach guy, greater Dowsett Beach guy, but my family's been summering here since the mid-30s. I've lived here for the last 3 years, and I've always viewed Hyannis as the bigger town that you went to, but I have to go there all the more because we no longer have a grocery store, any pharmacy, a country store. We have a lot of real estate shops on this street. And it's not easy to get a snack there. So, I would just say that while you're doing a legal, attempt to stop this, I would like to see if we could look at a political stop in this regard. Brewster has called for and had a successful town meeting where essentially if you get enough signatures, you can get these people, the town councilors, in front of you, hopefully in a place like, a gym with enough people so that we can have comprehensive discussion, question and answers with our representatives about, this, with drilling every 5 miles on beaches, all this stuff. And, if you don't like the answers that you're getting, vote no votes.
Yes.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Thank you. I do want to say, for those of you who don't know me and maybe haven't followed this around, let me see, my first theory for what to do with this land and parcel was to have the town take it by eminent domain. And because, pay Mr. Finch market rate, whatever it is, a fair price for it, because it's too important. And that way they could absolutely control everything that happens with this property, because it's too important not to control, from the ecological part to the housing aspect, if any, to the needs in the community for green and open space. The open space and recreation plan, the town of Barnstable specifically says that there should be more green space south of Route 28, aiming it toward this area in Hyannis, because there isn't enough green space. So, thank you for your comments. I think you're right. Yeah.
I have a question. When you were talking about the voting, you were talking about the entire town of Barnstable having having a meeting.
Yeah, essentially,
If we have one for us, but we
us.
could
Well,
do
what this would do was
for
would get
everybody.
everybody, Barnstable could do it.
Okay,
Everybody,
well, that's what we
and
need
all
to do.
your precinct people, or your people there.
You're talking about all villages.
At once.
Thinking about having an ambassador from each village that can kind of head it up, because we're obviously struggling to do. We know we have wonderful people here from Dowsett Beach, and we have some people who are involved with us, and if we all get together, because we know that this may be a precedent for other villages, and also the respiratory law. But I think that's good. And what's your name, sir?
Burning play.
Thank you.
Okay, hand here, and then we'll come back up.
What you said about eminent domain, that's a slippery slope. But we thought the Cape Cod Commission was supposed to be the adult in the room, okay? So I don't know how this got through that. Second of all,
I just want to make a note on that. I worked a long time, Rick was on it too, Cape Cod Economic Development Council. I spent 20-something years on that. We worked hand in hand, although we weren't a part of the Cape Cod Commission at the time, with them, and got to learn how they worked. And at the time, they had an economic development director. They had, all kinds of stuff going on. And they actually did their job with setting the expectations. And they met the goals and they reviewed every single project for benefits and detriments. And it was a very predictable process and you could count up the benefits, count up the detriments. It was an obvious vote and that's the way it went. And they used to do their job, but it's changed.
I built about 20 buildings in the greater INS area, and I've been on both sides of the commission.
Mhm.
When they wanted it, everything was smooth sliding, and when they didn't, they threw every single obstacle in your way, including mitigation. You know, open space mitigation, traffic mitigation. I just don't get this. Now, what I get is, because I had lunch with Alyssa, you know, from Hack, and I'm a contributor to Hack too.
Yeah, me too.
Big fan. Her doom and gloom scenario of how badly we need housing, it's so bad that she's willing to give up this beautiful green estuary, okay?
She lives in Orleans.
I get it. Yeah, no, well, listen, I'm not here, I wouldn't be here, I'm not here to be the bad guy, okay? She said that, I said, well, why don't we just have 100% affordable housing here in some way, shape or form? She said, any house, she said, first of all, they wouldn't do it that way. I said, well, what if we cut it down? She said, if it's not 312 units, Lennar, or representative is Lennar.
It's Quatera now, but you're right.
They'll walk away. If it gets scaled down, they'll walk away because it's not big enough to make a profit, okay? So, you know, she said, I said, well, what about the market rate units that are gonna be $3,500 a month? I mean, that's what, most people's mortgages aren't even that much on a nice house. She said, we need housing, period. Whether it's affordable or not, we need housing. She said, we have people that can't find housing, period. And if the housing even isn't affordable, like $3,500 a month, she said, we might find ways to subsidize to let people move in there if we give them like vouchers and all, you know, that kind of stuff. So I'm just telling you what the opposition, I think that went a long way toward the political,
You're right.
pivot that the Cape Cod Commission did was, you know, listening to.
Nobody wants to go against housing assisted for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And against this, when you listen to you'd be unmerciful when you listen to Alyssa about how bad some people have it. So I get all that, but this is not, I did 2 29-unit apartment projects in the last 5 years. And our rents are $2,000 a month, not $3,500 for a 2-bedroom. If we try to raise the rent to $2,100, people say they have to leave. So I don't know where people are gonna get this kind of 250 people paying 30. I don't even know where they're gonna find these people.
Well, they're gonna be
You can't find
second,
that even paying 2,100.
they're gonna serve as second homes for people from the tri-state area, et cetera, et cetera. They're not even gonna be here around housing. It's gonna be very sad.
We feel that we don't have to sacrifice housing, and we do not have to sacrifice the environment. We can find a way to uphold.
Right.
Yeah, so given your scenario, I don't disagree with anything you've said. Not that it's up to me at all, but the state, the county, and the town all have surplus properties in town. It would be very easy to do the Michelle Wu model and basically say, this property, 60 units, this property, 40 units, this property, you know, 80 units, whatever it is, this property, 30 units. Exactly.
Do small scale things.
Do small scale, make sure they're good quality, make sure they're designed to fit into the area, make sure they're near public transportation and amenities, et cetera, et cetera. And if you put an RFP out, and if somebody responds to that and they're willing to do all the things that we just talked about, give them the land so they can afford to make 30% of it affordable. They can afford to do that way. It doesn't all have to be market
I
rate.
think this should be 100 units, all affordable. That's what I think.
I'm not sure it would support the structures at this point. I'm not sure. Bob Schulte, he had his hand up first.
Just a question regarding the comment about the town meeting. I know that we're not a town meeting form of government, but this question really is more for Kim. I seem to recall a while back that our illustrious town council president, Matt Levesque, had agreed to a meeting, a town meeting at the high school. Is that still something, if it got to the point where this went before the town council? Has he agreed to town-wide meeting at the high school where residents can have their say or input on this?
Yes, he has. We have a petition that's been signed by over 600 residents of the town of Barnstable asking for a meeting of the voters in front of the town council to discuss this very issue. So that is coming up. Matt Levesque said to me, Kim, when do you want to have that? And I said, after it's left the Cape Cod Commission and before the town councilors will be voting on this project. So that's a high on our priority list to work with him on that. What Matt did say to me in a subsequent meeting is, Kim, you know, the people who are all for this housing are going to be there, you know, speaking up. I said, yes, it's a meeting of the voters.
Okay, and Gloria had a question, and then I'll go to others.
Not a question, a comment. First of all, I personally am glad to see other people beside Hyannis residents here today. Because I think it's extremely important from my own history of being on the town council. Practically since 1971, when I arrived here in town. And I was on the council and also helped to change the form of government. So it would be more democratic. Now, I'd like to say that it's extremely important that all of us in some way get to have the other towns, other villages, part of this whole effort, including open town meetings. What I am curious about is that when I was a selectman first, and then a town councilor, I insisted on open town meetings to discuss difficult projects. And we had it. We had a number, whether you disagreed or not, they heard you. They discussed it. This is where our democracy is really going downhill. And this gentleman is absolutely right. I think it's part of an environmental discussion, part of a water quality discussion, which hinges back to our local comprehensive plan. But they're doing now a new comprehensive plan. This is what we have to worry about, because they're going to apply all these new methods, which are against listening to people who are disagreeing. And I believe some of it is because the current counselors do not know enough about government. Unfortunately, many of us in the past, we worked on committees of the government before we ran for office. By the time we ran for office, we were experienced, understood the refinements and subtleties of what you can and can't do with the population. And you respected those procedures and those legal forms, which are now being thrown out the door. This particular piece of property should stay in its natural state, not to accommodate them, because it's the last piece of natural property in the village of Hyannis, and it creates and insists on quality. There's some quality left. We can't just take it away. And when this first came up, I went to one of the first meetings, and I told them about this. And all they could say to me, the town councilors at the time, was that we have a very good sewer system. All this. So what? The second point was the small businesses on Main Street are going to profit from all this, because they'll have all of these people here patronizing the stores. What we understand is most of the applications come from off Cape. They're not going to insist on just local Cape people who've been here a long time who need workforce housing, and they should use workforce more than affordable, because that's where it's at right now. So everything is upside down. And I think that if we could only get maybe 5 times this amount of people in one place insisting on open government, on listening to what the project is not in the best interest of our town. It isn't. There are so many other vacant lots. There's so many other housing projects that they have going. So this is mainly money for certain people. And I think that is so incredibly bad for how we're going as an entire Cape and as an entire town. I am so happy that some of you are from other villages because I have lived through Hyannis never touching the villages of Centerville, Osterville, Marston's Mill, never touching the mindset. If anything happened, it was Hyannis as a village that paid for it. But if anything was going on that was good in any of the other villages, Hyannis paid for it. Things were happening and we came out, but it was just the reverse for years. But now that so many of you have come out for this that are not in the village of Hyannis, you understand the plight of the whole town as a whole and why it's so important for everybody to participate and come out and speak forcefully. Because I have seen in the past, when I was a counselor, when I was a select woman, I saw in the past, if enough people spoke up with the right facts, it was changed. I remember fighting for things like no on the ocean at
Save our
Louisville.
sound.
What?
Save our sound.
Yeah, to save us out and fighting it from all kinds of nightclubs on the water with boats. And I had to look up the legal parts of this, why they couldn't do it. Even Bornstein's place, the dockside, we turned it down 20 years ago, the exact same thing. Because we had legal reasons for it. We looked it up, we worked hard. But so many, unfortunately, today who are counselors do not have experience and they're ready to look at the outside facts, but nothing that really matters.
Lori, we're gonna move on because we got other questions. Thank you for all that from the heart. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Vigil. I'm from the village of Osterville. I appreciate all the comments from my fellow villagers. And I just want to say a few things. In general, our society is just engulfed with greed and the lack of common sense. Okay? I mean, it's just incredible. Now, I understand Dows's speech. There's no common sense to that. When President Biden pushed through all the wind projects, there was really no common sense because we live in a society that alternative energy is not going to be in our lifetime to be supporting our earth. Okay, so my challenge to all my fellow villagers is we have to support Twin Brooks and other projects, organizations like Tipping Point Fighting, Surfside Crossing in Nantucket, and Carp's thing, the Bernsteins. But the only way we do it in our society is by the rule of law. So the men and women that should be men and women of men and women, not men and women of law. So in that sense, I'm making a challenge to all my fellow villagers to support. The only way we're going to win this is in the legal battle, and to support Twin Brooks in a separate. And my particular contribution right now, I'm going to give this to Kim, is a $1,000 check for the organization.
We're getting a little late, but we have some more questions here.
I just wanted to find out that you say this will go before the town council. I don't know.
Well, it all depends on the outcome of the appeal. She said, you said this will go before town council. So,
Meeting.
does
The next step in the process.
do they not have to get a building permit through the process?
no. Yes. So
Going to the planning board and.
Yes. So what would happen if, this is in court now, in Barnstable Superior Court, it's being appealed, okay?
Yeah.
That's gonna take quite a while. If the appeal is denied, and it's gonna come to the town, which we hope doesn't happen, but I mean, if that happens, then it has to go through Conservation Commission, the planning board, and then town council.
Okay, the point being that the town council, every seat on the town council is open.
Yeah, exactly.
Up for election in November.
Yeah. You need to be sure that your voice is heard very loudly and very clearly by whoever your council person is.
Okay, I think that's a very, very important point. And we have John Crow from the Osterville Village Association. I just want to say, I appreciate you people staying here. We did say we would do this for an hour, but I'm getting some very useful conversations here. So we will leave, but if you can stay, that'd be great. John, what do you have to say here?
I'll be as quick as I possibly. I'm the president of the Osterville Village.
Can you come up here, John?
Sure.
Thanks. We are not getting kicked out. Automatic light switch, yeah.
My name is John Crow, I'm president of the Osterville Village Association. I want the people sitting here to know, they're not from Osterville, that many of us are against this project for the same reasons we'd be against it anywhere, because it doesn't make any sense environmentally, in sense for the citizens of Hyannis who need the green space. And so, you know, there's a lot more support than you might think you have for this. Bad decisions, whether they're in Hyannis, Osterville, or anywhere else, are bad decisions and should be fought. Real quick about the hack, nobody wants to stand up to the hack. This hack needs to be stood up against. If they stood down during the most important conversation about short-term rentals, where it was one of the largest drivers of housing unavailability in the last number of years. And they were fully in support of having those everywhere, including this project. So these projects and a lot of these building projects that you're going to see there's no rules against having short-term rentals. So people will buy them for investments, and they'll rent them out. Okay, they won't be renting them out. People who need housing in our town. They'll be at a higher rate. And the last thing I wanted to say is our town council is the problem. Okay, we have a large percentage of town councilors who do not vote along with their constituents. Okay, I see in this room 3 or 4 people that I can name that should run for town council. One being Felicia.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair. Terrific. We don't agree on everything else, but I always know that she is coming from a logical, fact-based approach. And that's the way things should happen. You know, there's another few people here, maybe Denise, Angela, that should think about running, because we have counselors that are in Centerville and Hyannis and other places that are basically, they've made up their mind. They won't listen to anybody else, and it's not healthy for our community. So encourage these people to get up and run. Help them run. Give them donations to run, and get out and vote and tell your neighbors, because that's the only way this kind of thing is going to be stopped, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Follow on comment with Gloria's comments, and thank you, Gloria, those are outstanding. I just wanted to say the comments about the council. I think one of the great exceptions to that is Councilor Betty Lepke, who is one of our newest counselors.
Agreed.
Who is part of the just want to comment, you know, she has been at all these meetings for St. Bernard's speech, a variety of meetings. She is supportive of what the residents is going to listen. I want to thank her again, with the exception of 1 or 2 counselors. She is one of the shining examples of our current council.
And you should be running for well said. I want to make one comment about hacking, what they were silent on. So in the town of Barnstable, you know, the project across from the middle school on Route 28, it's called 850 Residences. Okay. As a part of what is now Everly, but before Everly, when it was on the planning books, that whole Whitehall Pavilion area was supposed to be 100% affordable housing. That was an affordable housing component for the project that was going to be built in the industrial park. It was supposed to be reserved for Barnstable residents and veterans and others beyond that, but they had preference. Okay, those two groups. There were going to be 64 units in there, I believe, of 100% affordable. Okay, it was zoned for that purpose. It was called the Multi-Family Affordable Housing District. Okay, it was the only zone with that label on it in the town of Barnstable. When the two developers who just developed that property wanted to develop it, they didn't want to do what it was zoned to do. The town council, I think Rick and I were the only two that spoke against this in the whole town. Where was housing assistance? Are you kidding me? They could have had 64 units of affordable housing and they were nowhere to be seen. And they never spoke up and said, wait. If you're going to remove the zoning from here, let's put it someplace else so we still get our affordable units. Silent. And the town council just said, yeah, okay, we'll vote the zone away. See you, bye. We don't need to replace it anywhere. And now they're all complaining, housing, we need housing. It's shameful. Rick, you want to defend yourself?
Yes. First of all, I was the founder of Housing Assistance Corporation. And I don't think I need the microphone, do I? But
What's more for the recording,
Oh, that's right, sorry. In 1974, I founded the Housing Assistance Corporation. By the way, on the property you were talking about, when I retired from Housing Assistance 5 years ago, we had made a deal with the LaRusso Foundation to buy that property for $200,000 and to do all affordable housing there. And my replacement decided he didn't want to do it.
There you go.
You know, there are obviously specifics, AJ, and we should get together sometime. But one of the things I want to talk about, and I could go on for hours, and I'm not going to, but the history in this country. In the 60s and 70s, there was money for sewers that went to towns across the country, and we turned it down on Cape Cod because we were afraid they would cause growth. That was told to me by Stacey Petsy, our previous planning commissioner. The second thing was, there was also money to do, I've done 23 developments, my career, among a lot of other things. But I did a development in Ohio with federal money when I worked there, and it was a third. There was a third very low income, a third middle income, and a third market. 62 units. It wasn't exactly a third, but you can't divide that by 3. And when when Reagan became president, and I don't want to malign Reagan, but he got rid of all the housing programs, all of them. There were ones at Farmers Home Administration, ones at HUD, there were all kinds of things. The Barnstable Housing Authority and the Falmouth Housing Authority, both of them created a lot of housing, did it when there was federal money, and it all went away. In the state of Massachusetts, there were several housing development programs that went away under the Weld administration. They went away. The only program left federally is the tax credit program, where investors can invest with the IRS to get tax credits to write down the cost of the buildings, but not the subsidy of the unit. And
Evidently, you can do this through a COVID relief act.
well, I mean,
Correct.
the other thing about this project is that, okay, and this is my point of view, I've spent my entire career trying to help people who needed housing get housing. That's all I've ever done, going back to 1967. And so one of the problems with this project is it doesn't help the people who have the greatest need. And there are 4 categories of those people. 1, single mothers with kids. 2, people with disabilities. 3, senior citizens, and 4, workforce. Those are the people who need to be helped by projects that we do. That's critical for Cape Cod. The other thing is that should government be helping people who are well off to get housing because it's for economic development?
You know, yes and no. But let's face it, if you have problems with food, then you can get food at various places. There are food pantries in every town on Cape Cod. If you want healthcare, you can go to Cape Cod Hospital and talk to Gloria's son and get healthcare. When you are in the housing, you have a big, huge problem. And I have seen, one of my board members told me when I retired, that we had helped 160,000 people, some of them more than once, when I was there. I didn't try to change the system, but now we need to change the system. We have a government across the country that the people want certain things. How about gun control, for example? I'm only in the environment. We need to do something about both of these things, and we've been really slow. You know, I first heard about the environmental problems the world has in 1963 from a man who was planning world conferences on the subject. We got the first major legislation in Washington this year. 60 years later, we have neglected it. With housing, we've done the same thing. I'm not going to go into it because you don't want to hear me talk all night. But we have neglected our responsibilities to get people housing. So with this, we need to organize, and I've talked to Twin Brooks people about this, and the Barnstable Land Trust, as a matter of fact, that's proposing some housing itself, which is remarkable. Barnstable Land Trust proposing housing? Never heard of such a thing. Well, it's because people recognize, and maybe the person you talk to at HAC doesn't recognize, that the environment is every bit as important as housing. You know, if we don't have the environment, we have nothing. And so we have to do both things, and we have to figure out, and we're citizens, we've got to do it both ways.
Thank you.
A tool that we found that is most effective in Save Twin Brooks. We have how many people on our mailing list, Angela? Over 400. About 400. Okay, are these small work groups? Okay, so I really want. I mean, we would love some kind of support from everybody in the room. Rick joined our group, and now he and Janet and Felicia are part of a subcommittee helping to define Twin Brooks' position on housing and looking at the housing issue that we have. We have another group working on strategy. Rick is part of that, Tom Burgess. So what I'm asking, you know, the minimum thing you could do is listen to Pat Dismaris on Sunday, and John Ale, who's a member of our group. He's not our lawyer, but he is a lawyer. He's going to be talking to Pat. And what is it? Is it 12 or 1 o'clock that he usually? 12 o'clock. Okay. Read the article that's online right now in the Cape Cod Times. I thought that was a very, very fair article. It should probably be in the paper now. Listen to WCAI when they talk to us when we first filed our appeal. Become knowledgeable. And if you leave here, talk to your next door neighbor, talk to your relative. The phone call was from our son in Michigan. He's studying environmental science. And I talked to him last week. I said, I want to talk to you. I want you to listen to me in terms of what you're studying in school and what we're facing here. Oh, Mom, yeah, I understand this. And give me some actually good suggestions. He was probably just checking in. Everybody has a role. Mark Robinson, who's head of the Compact of Conservation Trust, if you've been to some of our meetings, you've heard Mark. He stood up at the very first group meeting we had at Union Chapel in Hyannisport, and he said, you can do this. I've seen it happen on Cape Cod. If the public, the residents get together and have a voice, they can do it. We can make this happen. We can do better. This is like a David versus Goliath thing. Well, folks, you're the voice. And what happened last night at the planning board?
Monday night.
Monday night?
It's like last night.
Oh my gosh, I know all the days were in. Felicia, what happened?
Just one.
Yeah, the people won, planning board said no to 5.5 story, 29 condos where the dark side is on School Street. We had a hundred. It was zoned, it was zoned for 2.5 stories, maximum of 35 feet. And the compromise was 4.5 stories for 65 feet. That's what the developer came back at, because it was originally over 70 feet, but he took 7 feet off. And he thought that was enough, and the planning board said, yay, finally, they said no.
Denise, you want to?
I just want to clarify something. I've been on the zoning board for the last year. And you can talk about whether the current council members, some of them are unqualified. The people running our government right now are hired planners and they rule the roost. They are very aggressive. They want to make this a big development. I think they want to put it in their resumes that they built up the town of Hyannis and became a metropolis. And everything on the zoning board, we're not making the decisions. We're getting told, oh, but that's a waiver. That's a waiver. We made poor Joe Keller beg to put another low-cost apartment in a complex he already had. But we let these giant buildings, they never come to the zoning board that has been appointed to look out to protect these things. These, what's her name, Elizabeth Jenkins. He sits every week with the town planner and the head of the town council. And they decide where the meetings are gonna be, when they're gonna be open to the public, and what's gonna be on the agenda. So, yes, we need a new town council, but we also need to take back our town to be managed from planners that don't live here necessarily. At the last meeting I went to, they had 3 sets of consultants telling us what their long-range plan was. And spent a fortune, but buying pizza for everybody, but we couldn't talk. There was no open discussions from the public to get up and say anything. So there's a bigger problem here, but the first step is to change out the town
The
council.
commission used to be the umbrella.
Right, right, now it's not. So anyway, sorry, Kim, I know you want to get
Well
it.
said, okay, that's fine.
Well said.
So everyone has a voice here, and we need your help. Now, how do we need your help? Talk to your relatives, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, get people informed. People need to really understand what's going on here. Roberta?
Nextdoor app. Download the Nextdoor app and join the Nextdoor conversation.
Thank you, Janet.
Wonderful people that are organizing a building moratorium on high density. What's his name? Eric Schwab. West Hyannis. I'm telling you, download the Nextdoor app and join the conversation with the West Hyannis neighborhood. If you really want to care and get involved, they'll guide you. I mean, I wrote a really good email and they told me how to write it and what to say. And I said, you know what, Hyannis Harbor is just as important as Gloucester, and it should be designed for the public use, not for a private condo. And
Thank you, Roberta. And that, people are bringing that to my attention about next door neighbors. So that is a big benefit. Okay, so we need your voice. Look what happened at the dockside on Monday. People spoke up. They spoke up ahead of time. They called in. I was watching it. I'm like, what is he going to decide for or against? It was really hard. And when this project goes in front of the town, it goes in front of the planning board. So everyone has a voice here. We filed an appeal. Appeals are expensive. If you really think that this project is something worth fighting for, we would love a donation. I want to thank everyone who gave us a donation this evening. I didn't expect it. This is amazing, absolutely amazing. But we have the best environmental law firm in Boston, McGregor, Laguerre, and Stevens. And McGregor, when he writes a letter, people pay attention. He wrote a letter about the firing range down at the Air Force base, and that they want to set up the Air Force base, and I think it woke some people up. So we've been working with these guys since we became a corporation, so since 2021. So we're putting our time in. We're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. So what happens if you donate? Where does the money go? Obviously, it helps with legal fees. It also helps hire subject matter experts to do the testimony in front of those people when we have the meeting with the voters, or in front of another organization. We're talking environment here. We're talking lifestyle here. The president of what was LMC that now I call QMC, and they're Katera, but that is one of the names that they said you could use,
When Milton Berglund hosted a meeting of board members at his home in Hyannis, and we invited the head of QMC, Dan Lee, to meet with us, he said to me, this is going to improve the quality of life of the person who lives in Plymouth, who has to drive to Cape Cod every day to work. I looked at him and I said, what about the quality of life of the people who live here on Cape Cod? So that's what we're fighting for. And I don't know, I don't care where you were born, how many houses or apartments or whatever you have, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. We're beginning to hear a voice from the environmental justice community. Deborah Dagwan, we are board members with her at the Greater Hyannis Civic Association. She was a town councilor for 12 years. She was on the school board for 6 years. She spoke up at the hearing regarding the dockside development, and she is speaking up now more on our behalf. She is part of what they call the environmental justice community that's surrounding this property. And she said again, you know what, we're getting really tired of people telling us what we have to have, going back to Denise's comment, what we have to have in our community. We live here. We've got to drive through the West End Rotary. We've got to try to get our kids to school, or try to get to doctor's appointments, or try to get to the grocery store. Let's start engaging with each other and talking to each other. And in terms of HAC, I did listen to the head of HAC at a Hyannis Chamber of Commerce meeting, and she stood up and she said, we want 5 of these developments on Cape Cod. And I mentioned that to a town councilor, and he said, Kim, where are they going to put them? There are places for these developments. They just rezoned the parking lot at the mall, and there's a nice little spot right near Trader Joe's and right near the mall where big developments like this could go. When we started this, I sat in Elizabeth Jenkins' office and Mark L's office, and I said, why can't something like this go over next to Everly? I said, you've got some of the same executives leading this effort that worked with Everly and that led that effort. Why don't you build that up as a high density housing area with parks and whatever? Not interested. And when you hear people say, oh, Kim, we can't do this because, ask the next question. We couldn't do this because early on, the town needed the $500,000 in taxes to pay for the sewer. Well, wait a second. By the developer's own fiscal analysis, my husband, Brian, did the math. Brian, what's the net income from taxes after you back out all the services?
A whopping 31,000 a year.
Whopping 31,000, 500,000, 31,000. It doesn't happen if you don't ask the questions. We've got a lot of smart people in our core group, and could definitely benefit from more smart people to read the documents. Every document that was presented in front of the Cape Cod Commission was read by one or more of our members. And that is when you begin to say, no, wait a second, what is this? And then when you raise questions about a pond and the environmental person says, oh, well, the developer, we're gonna move the fish. You're gonna move the fish. Some anonymous donor sent me a photograph of a turtle that nests right in that area every single year. I don't know who this person is, but obviously that's the kind of mentality we have, and that's what we have to turn around. That's what we have to turn around. It's not either or. We can have housing and we can save the environment. Priscilla, I'm going to give you the last word.
Housing as well as environment, or if you move the city, you then do the compromise, go more toward the land trust plan. Okay, let's 100 units of housing, people that.
Priscilla, I think that's an excellent question. As soon as we have something in front of us, we will look at it. And Janet is meeting with someone from the state and some of the people who are in this room to talk about how they're actually working on tightening up their proposal.
But we're not planning.
But we're not planning on housing at this site.
We're not planning on lose that, so that needs.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're not.
In the appeal, we lose on the appeal, it goes through a whole nother process. We still have to go to the town, we still have to go to the town council.
So what we really try to do is educate you. And part of the education is, and this is a fascinating document, it's an appeal. It's a lawsuit against the Cape Cod Commission. It's on our website. Our press release is on our website. As we get more information available to us, we will share it with you on a press release. I hope you're all part of our email list. We will share it with you via email, and we will continue to have meetings like this to update everyone and to continue to hear your voice. What have we looked at?
Sample letters on our website.
Pardon?
If you need to find a letter, there are sample letters on our website. It says how you can help, and you can just paste on into an email, send it off to your town council, or you could use the bullet points right on it.
And I don't know how many people attended our forum that we had in November of 2021, and folks were seated here like you, and they said, what can we do? And we said, you can write your town councilor. Guess what? They didn't hear anything. You can call your town councilor. They didn't get a call back. You know, so be diligent. And if you don't get what you need, bring it to the head of, bring it to Mark Ellis. Hey, I'm calling my town council. I have some concerns. Nobody's getting back to me. And with your letters, Angela, you said to send the letters now, not to the individual town council.
It's all on the website.
Yeah, send the letter to the woman, who's the,
Cynthia Lovell.
Cynthia Lovell, to go out to all town councilors. If we don't speak up, you know, because for a while there, all we heard was we read articles, and we heard about housing, and we heard from Hack, and they were in the news, and they did the Boston Globe story. If we don't get our voice out there of what we're advocating for, shame on us. But we're gonna win. I know we're gonna win. Save that turtle, yes?
Just one advice that I've had this experience, if you said something at Cynthia level, specify, please send to all councilors, because I've had that experience where you said something and I've been told, oh, well, you didn't tell me to send to anybody else. So specify that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Roberta, make it quick.
This is important. This is a critically endangered migratory wildlife corridor. My deck is right here. You should hear. I mean, but the Chris Viotti for the herring one, the government is giving a lot of money right now to Cape Cod to restore the herring runs and the eel, the American glass eel, which are endangered migratory wildlife, and drawing them as fish.
Oh.
And this used to be a herring run up here. It probably was one here. It would be really nice if we wrote, I personally have filed a complaint with the EPA about this development agreement, and I'd like to see more people do that. You can just go to the EPA website and say, I have a complaint. Lennar is planning on doing something that's against our Water Protection Act. Lennar is doing things in California. They're being sued. I don't know if you look up Lennar suits in California. There's 2 big suits. It's important to know about them. We're fighting Lennar. Lennar will stop at nothing to annihilate this spot.
Okay, so basically what she's saying is, also involved in this suit is Coterra, the Baltic QMC, which is a subsidiary of one of the largest, if not the largest, residential developer in the United States. I still believe we can win. And I want to thank you all for being here. Go to everyone. It's nice to see everyone.